Put it back. We need the money more than we need the formula. Ethan Cole stopped in the middle of the grocery store aisle, as if the voice had reached across 6 years and taken hold of him. He had entered the store for coffee before returning to his downtown office, still wearing the charcoal suit from an early investor meeting, his phone vibrating with messages he had no intention of reading. But that voice made everything else disappear. Ethan slowly turned toward the customer service counter. A woman stood there with one hand resting beside an unopened container of baby formula. Her coat was older than anything he remembered her wearing, and exhaustion showed beneath the careful composure on her face. But he knew her immediately. Claire Bennett, the woman he had once planned to marry. The woman who had disappeared from his life without an explanation he had ever understood. I can refund it to the original payment method, the employee said gently. Claire shook her head. That card is closed. Store credit is fine. Ethan remained frozen near the end of the aisle. 6 years ago, he had searched for answers until anger became easier than hope. Eventually, he had built a company, made millions, bought a house with rooms he barely entered, and convinced himself that success was proof he had moved forward. One glimpse of Claire proved otherwise. Then a small voice called from behind her. Mom. A boy hurried toward the counter carrying a worn blue backpack. Claire immediately crouched and adjusted the child's jacket. I told you to stay with Mrs. Parker. She is right there. An older woman approached slowly from several feet away, pushing a shopping cart. He saw you and escaped me, she said with a smile. Claire smiled back, but Ethan barely noticed. He was staring at the boy. 5 years old, maybe. Dark curls. Warm brown skin. A serious expression that seemed strangely familiar. Then the boy looked directly toward Ethan, and something inside him shifted. Those eyes. Ethan had seen them in photographs his entire childhood. His father's eyes. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here. Now, back to Ethan. He told himself resemblance meant nothing. Millions of children shared similar features. Claire could have built an entirely different life after leaving him. She had every right to do so, but the calculation had already begun in his mind. 6 years since she disappeared. A boy who looked approximately 5. Ethan felt his heartbeat change. Claire took the store credit receipt and reached for the boy's hand. That was when she looked across the aisle. Her eyes found Ethan. The color seemed to leave her face. Neither of them moved. The grocery store continued around them. Carts rolling, registers beeping, strangers discussing dinner plans, while 6 years of unanswered questions stood between two people who had once known everything about each other. Ethan took one slow step forward. Claire tightened her grip on the boy's hand. Claire. Her name came out quieter than he expected. The boy looked up at his mother. Mom, who is that? Claire did not answer. Ethan looked from her to the child and back again. He had negotiated acquisitions worth hundreds of millions of dollars without losing his composure, but now he could barely form the question gathering in his throat. Claire seemed to understand it anyway. Please, she whispered. Not here. Ethan stared at the boy once more. The child tilted his head in exactly the same way Ethan's father used to when confused. Coincidence, Ethan told himself. It had to be. Then the older woman beside Claire spoke gently to the child. Come on, Noah. Your 5th birthday cake is not going to choose itself. Ethan stopped breathing for one impossible second. 5 years old. Claire closed her eyes. And Ethan finally understood why she had looked terrified to see him. Claire did not wait for Ethan to ask another question. She turned toward Mrs. Parker and spoke quietly. Could you take Noah to look at the cakes for a few minutes? The older woman glanced between Claire and Ethan, understanding more than she said. Of course. Noah resisted for only a second. Can I get chocolate? You can look, Claire replied. Looking is free. The words were meant lightly, but Ethan heard the weight beneath them. Noah followed Mrs. Parker toward the bakery, turning once to study the stranger his mother clearly knew. Ethan watched him disappear around the corner before facing Claire again. He is 5. Claire folded the store credit receipt and placed it carefully inside her purse. Yes. He just turned 5. Ethan, please. 6 years ago you left. Claire's eyes hardened. That is what you remember? The question stopped him. What is that supposed to mean? It means this is not the place. Ethan looked toward the bakery aisle. Then tell me where the place is, because I have spent 6 years without answers. And now I walk into a grocery store and find you returning baby formula with a 5-year-old boy who looks like my family. Claire glanced around them. Keep your voice down. Ethan immediately lowered it. I'm not trying to embarrass you. You do not have to try. Her words landed harder than anger would have. Ethan looked at the unopened formula on the counter, then at the store credit receipt in her hand. Are you in trouble? Claire's expression changed instantly. Do not. I am asking a question. No. You are looking at my code, my grocery receipt, and that counter, and deciding you understand my life. Ethan stepped back slightly. She was right. He had been calculating her circumstances the same way he calculated failing divisions inside his company, searching for a problem he could solve. All right, he said. Then I will not ask about money. Claire looked surprised. Ethan continued. I will ask about Noah. Her face closed again. He is my son. I can see that. Then you have your answer. No, Claire. I have the beginning of one. She looked toward the bakery. Ethan followed her gaze and saw Noah laughing as Mrs. Parker pointed toward a row of birthday cakes. The sight created an ache he could not explain. When is his birthday? Ethan asked. Claire said nothing. Today. Tomorrow. Ethan's mind moved backward through dates he had tried for years not to revisit. The final months with Claire. Their last argument. The morning he returned from Seattle and discovered her apartment empty. The unanswered calls afterward. Was he early? Claire looked sharply at him. That reaction was enough to deepen the question. Ethan, was he? You do not get to interrogate me in a grocery store after 6 years. I'm not asking about 6 years. I am asking about 5. Claire's eyes filled with something between anger and fear. You think you can appear out of nowhere and demand access to my life because a child has brown eyes? No. Ethan's voice softened. I think I am standing 10 yards away from a 5-year-old boy whose birthday fits a timeline you clearly do not want me calculating. Claire looked down. For the first time since seeing him, she had no immediate answer. Ethan felt the room narrowing around them. Tell me I am wrong, he said. Claire remained silent. Tell me Noah cannot possibly be mine. She lifted her eyes to his, and the pain in them erased every prepared question from his mind. Before she could speak, Noah came running back with a photograph of a birthday cake on a bakery brochure. Mom, look. This one has airplanes. He stopped when he saw Ethan still standing there. Then he smiled with the easy curiosity of a child who had no idea that 2 adults were watching their entire past change shape. Do you like airplanes? Noah asked him. Ethan looked at Claire. She seemed almost unable to breathe. Then he looked back at the boy. Yes, Ethan said quietly. I do. Noah grinned. Me too. Mom says I got that from my dad. Claire closed her eyes. Ethan did not move. Noah looked between them, confused by the silence. And for the first time, Ethan realized Claire had never told him Noah had no father. She had only refused to tell Ethan who that father was. Noah was still waiting for an answer about airplanes when Claire finally found her voice. Mrs. Parker, would you mind taking him to choose the cake decorations too? The older woman studied Claire for a moment, then nodded. Come on, birthday boy. Let us see what they have. Noah looked disappointed. But I was talking to him. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. Claire managed a small smile. You can finish another time. Another time. Ethan heard the words, even if Claire had not meant them as a promise. Noah waved before following Mrs. Parker toward the bakery counter. Ethan waited until they were out of earshot. Then he looked directly at Claire. Who is his father? Her expression hardened. You cannot do this here. Then give me somewhere else to do it. There is nothing to discuss today. Claire, you disappeared 6 years ago. Now I find you with a 5-year-old son whose birthday fits the exact timeline. And he just told me you said he got his love of airplanes from his father. Lots of people love airplanes. That is not an answer. Claire picked up her purse. I have to go. Ethan moved aside rather than blocking her path. I am not stopping you. But I am asking you one question. She looked at him. Who is Noah's father? For several seconds, neither spoke. Ethan searched her face for denial, anger, anything definite. What he found was fear. He has a good life, Claire finally said. That is not what I asked. He is loved. He is safe. He is everything that matters. Ethan glanced toward the bakery, where Noah was examining decorations with complete seriousness. Does he know his father? Claire swallowed. He knows enough. Does his father know him? The question changed everything. Claire looked away. Ethan felt his suspicion sharpen into something colder and more frightening. Claire, do not make assumptions. Then help me stop making them. She closed her eyes briefly. I cannot have this conversation with you standing between the produce section and the bakery. Fine. Tomorrow. A coffee shop. Your apartment. My office. Anywhere you choose. Your office. A bitter smile crossed her face. Of course. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? Nothing. No. You have been speaking to me like I already know something I clearly do not know. Claire stared at him, and for the first time, her anger became visible. You really believe I simply vanished, do you not? Ethan felt the old wound open. I came back from Seattle and your apartment was empty. And what did you do? I called you. How many times? For weeks. Claire gave a quiet, disbelieving laugh. That is interesting. Why? She shook her head. Not today. Ethan studied her. Did you try to contact me? Claire's eyes immediately filled with emotion she refused to release. You should ask yourself why you need to ask that question. Before Ethan could respond, Noah returned carrying a small plastic airplane decoration. Mom, Mrs. Parker says this one can go on top. Claire turned toward him, instantly softening. That looks perfect. Noah held the airplane toward Ethan. What do you think? Ethan crouched slightly, so they were closer to eye level. I think it is the best one. Noah smiled. Ethan noticed a small silver medical identification bracelet beneath the child's sleeve. The engraved words were partly visible. Noah pulled his hand back naturally, but Ethan had already recognized the condition listed there. His expression changed. His father had lived with the same inherited blood disorder. So had Ethan's younger sister. Claire saw exactly where he was looking. The fear returned to her face. Ethan slowly stood. Claire, he said, barely above a whisper. That condition runs in my family. She took Noah's hand. We are leaving. I am not asking you to answer in front of him. Ethan kept his voice calm. But I need the truth. Claire looked at him for one long moment. Then she reached into her purse, removed a receipt, and wrote something on the back. She placed it in his hand. Tomorrow, 10 in the morning. Ethan looked down at the address. When he raised his eyes again, Claire was already walking away with Noah. The boy turned and waved. Ethan lifted his hand automatically. Then he looked at the address again, realizing that tomorrow he would finally ask the question Claire had spent 5 years avoiding. And this time, silence would not be enough. At exactly 10 the next morning, Ethan stood outside a modest brick apartment building 3 miles from downtown, holding the address Claire had written on the back of the grocery receipt. He had arrived without a driver, without an assistant, and without telling anyone where he was going. For once, the company could survive without him for an hour. He was less certain he could survive the conversation waiting upstairs. Claire opened the door before he knocked a second time. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back, her expression guarded. Noah is at school, she said. Ethan nodded. Good. She stepped aside and let him enter. The apartment was small but carefully maintained. Children's drawings covered one side of the refrigerator. A plastic airplane sat on the coffee table beside a stack of library books. Ethan noticed everything and wished he did not. Each ordinary object represented a life that had continued without him. Claire remained standing. You wanted answers? Ethan turned toward her. I want the truth. Those are not always the same thing. Then start wherever they become different. Claire looked at him for several seconds before sitting in the chair opposite the couch. Ethan remained standing until she gestured toward it. You are making me nervous. He sat. I am sorry. The apology seemed to surprise her. Claire folded her hands. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after you left for Seattle. Ethan felt his chest tighten. We had not broken up when I left. No, we had argued. We argued about my work. We argued because your entire life was becoming your work. Ethan looked down briefly. 6 years earlier, his company had been weeks away from its first major national expansion. He had treated every delay like a disaster and every personal conversation like something that could wait. What happened after you found out? He asked. Claire's voice became quieter. I called you. Ethan looked up. I never received that call. I called more than once. Claire, I checked my phone every day after I came back and found you gone. I did not call your personal number at first. Your number had changed while you were traveling. I called your office. Ethan frowned. My office? I left messages. Then I sent emails. Then I went there. Ethan stared at her. You came to the building? Twice. I was never told. I know that now. The room became very still. Ethan leaned forward. What happened? Claire looked toward the window. The first time, reception told me you were unavailable. The second time, someone from your executive office came downstairs. Who? I am not ready to answer that yet. Ethan's patience strained. You were telling me someone knew you were pregnant and kept that from me? I did not tell them everything at first. I said I needed to speak with you personally. And then, Claire's eyes returned to his. Then I received a message. Ethan waited. It said you did not want further contact, that you were focused on the company, and that whatever existed between us was over. Ethan slowly shook his head. I never sent that. I believed you did. Why? Claire gave him a wounded look. Because you disappeared into work for weeks before Seattle. Because every time I asked where we were going, you told me to wait until after the next deal. Because the message sounded exactly like the man I was afraid you were becoming. Ethan had no immediate defense. That truth hurt differently. Why did you not come back again? I did. Claire stood and walked to a small desk. She opened a drawer and removed an old envelope. After Noah was born, I sent this to your office. Ethan took it carefully. His name was written across the front in Claire's handwriting. The envelope had been returned unopened. Across the corner was a faded company stamp indicating that the recipient was unavailable and personal correspondence was not accepted. Ethan stared at it. I never saw this. I know. Was there a letter inside? Claire nodded. Ethan looked at the sealed envelope, then back at her. What does it say? Her expression broke just slightly. It tells you that you have a son. Ethan looked down at the envelope in his hands. For 6 years, he had believed Claire had chosen silence. Now he was holding proof that someone else might have chosen it for both of them. Ethan held the unopened envelope as though it weighed more than every contract he had signed in his career. For several seconds, he could not speak. The paper was yellowed slightly at the edges, but Claire's handwriting remained unmistakable. His name, his old office address, a message sent years ago that had somehow traveled everywhere except where it mattered. May I open it? He asked. Claire looked at the envelope, then at him. It was written for you. Ethan carefully broke the seal. Inside was a folded letter and a small photograph. The photograph slipped into his hand first. A newborn wrapped in a pale blue blanket, sleeping beneath a hospital cap. Ethan stared at the tiny face. On the back, Claire had written a date. 5 years earlier. Noah's birthday. Ethan unfolded the letter but stopped before reading the first sentence. Before I read this, I need you to tell me something. Claire remained silent. Did you believe I knew? Her expression tightened. For years, yes. Ethan closed his eyes. And you thought I chose not to come? What else was I supposed to think? You could have found me. I tried. After the letter came back, Claire stood abruptly. Do you think I did not consider it? Do you think I did not spend nights wondering whether I should walk into one of your investor events carrying a baby and demand an explanation? Ethan said nothing. Claire continued, her voice controlled but trembling with old exhaustion. Then your company became national news. Your face was everywhere. Every article talked about the sacrifices you made to build your success. I had already been told you wanted no contact. My letter came back unopened. At some point, Ethan, continuing to chase someone who appeared determined not to answer, stopped feeling brave. It started feeling humiliating. Ethan lowered his eyes. I understand. No, you do not. You are right. I do not. His agreement stopped her. Ethan placed the letter carefully on the table. But I want to. Claire looked away. That does not change 5 years. Nothing can. Ethan's voice was quiet. But I need to know whether Noah is my son. Claire's shoulders became rigid. You already believe he is. Believing is not knowing. And if a test says he is? Ethan looked directly at her. Then I have missed 5 years of my son's life. And then what? I do not know. Claire gave a humorless laugh. That is exactly what frightens me. Ethan frowned. Why? Because your version of not knowing means lawyers, financial advisors, private schools, houses, schedules, and decisions made by people who have never met my child. I would never take him from you. You cannot promise what happens when fear enters the room. Ethan absorbed the accusation without interrupting. Then set the terms, he said. Claire stared at him. What? The test. The conversation. Whatever comes next. You choose the clinic. You choose the schedule. No lawyers unless we both agree they are necessary. No one from my company needs to know. Claire studied his face, searching for the executive who was accustomed to controlling every outcome. Ethan deliberately gave her nothing to fight. Noah deserves certainty, he said. So do you. So do I. Claire slowly sat down again. There is something else. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. What? The day I went to your office the second time. The person who came downstairs knew who I was before I introduced myself. Ethan went still. Who was it? Claire hesitated. Your mother. The words landed with terrifying precision. Ethan stared at her. My mother was there. She told me you had made your choice. Ethan shook his head. She never mentioned seeing you. I know. Did you tell her you were pregnant? Claire's silence answered before her voice did. Yes. Ethan looked at the returned envelope, then at the photograph of the newborn boy. Suddenly, the missing calls, the rejected letter, and 6 years of silence no longer felt like coincidence. They felt like a decision. And for the first time, Ethan realized the person who might have stolen those years from him had been sitting across from him at family dinners the entire time. Ethan did not call his mother when he left Claire's apartment. He wanted to. Every instinct told him to demand an explanation immediately, but anger had already cost enough people enough years. This time, he wanted facts before conclusions. He sat in his car for nearly 20 minutes with the unopened years spread across the passenger seat. Claire's returned envelope, the photograph of newborn Noah, and the letter he had finally read twice. Claire had written that she was not asking for money. She had written that she was scared. She had written that despite everything between them, Ethan deserved to know he had a son. The words made one fact impossible to ignore. Claire had tried. Ethan drove directly to his company's original headquarters, a smaller building they still used for administrative operations. Daniel Reeves, his longtime friend and chief financial officer, met him in a private conference room. You canceled 3 meetings, Daniel said. That usually means someone bought us or the building is on fire. Ethan placed a copy of the returned envelope on the table. I need records from 6 years ago. Daniel's expression changed. What kind of records? Visitor logs, executive office procedures, archived email routing, reception notes. Anything connected to Claire Bennett. Daniel recognized the name immediately. Claire. Ethan nodded. She came here after I left for Seattle. Daniel slowly sat down. I never knew that. Neither did I. For the next several hours, they searched what remained of the company's old digital archives. Most visitor records had been automatically deleted years earlier, but archived administrative emails still existed on a legacy server. Daniel found the first relevant entry shortly after 4 in the afternoon. A receptionist had sent a message to Ethan's former executive assistant stating that Claire Bennett was downstairs requesting an urgent personal meeting. The response came 12 minutes later. Ethan was unavailable. No follow-up had been recorded. You were in Seattle that day, Daniel said. Ethan stared at the screen. Who had access to my office communications? Your assistant. Me, technically. A few senior administrators. Daniel hesitated. And your mother during the expansion. Ethan already knew. He asked anyway. Why? Margaret was helping coordinate investor relationships while you were traveling. Ethan leaned back. The second record appeared 30 minutes later. Another message, sent 3 weeks after the first visit, referenced Claire by name. This time, someone had added a note instructing reception to direct any further personal communication through the executive office. The authorization initials belonged to Margaret Cole. Ethan felt something inside him go cold. Printed. Daniel looked at him. Ethan, what is happening? Ethan remained silent for several seconds. Then he took out his phone and showed Daniel the photograph of Noah. Daniel studied the child's face. His expression slowly changed. Is that? I do not know yet. Ethan put the phone away. But I should have known he existed. Daniel looked back at the records. You think your mother stopped Claire from reaching you? I think Claire says she did. Now I know my mother was involved in handling her visits. That is not proof she knew about the child. No. Ethan stood. And I am not going to accuse her until I have proof. His phone rang before Daniel could answer. Claire's name appeared on the screen. Ethan answered immediately. Claire. Her voice was calm, but serious. I scheduled the test. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. When? Tomorrow morning. 9:30. A private accredited clinic downtown. I will be there. There was a pause. Ethan, Noah does not know what the appointment is for. Understood. Whatever the result says, we tell him together. Slowly. In a way he can understand. Ethan looked through the conference room windows at the company he had spent years building. You have my word. After the call ended, Daniel watched him carefully. What happens if the boy is yours? Ethan looked again at the archived message carrying his mother's initials. Then I learn how to be his father. And your mother? Ethan gathered the printed records. First, I find out whether she made a terrible mistake or an unforgivable choice. He walked toward the door, then stopped. For years, Ethan had believed Claire had abandoned him. Claire had believed Ethan had rejected her and their child. Somewhere between those two beliefs, someone had controlled the truth. Tomorrow would answer whether Noah was his son. But Ethan was beginning to understand that the more dangerous question was no longer who Noah's father was. It was who had decided that father should never know. The clinic waiting room was quieter than Ethan expected. No dramatic music, no flashing revelation, no moment that looked important enough to divide a man's life into before and after. Just pale walls, soft chairs, a television playing without sound, and a clock moving 1 second at a time. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early. Claire was already there. Noah sat beside her, carefully guiding a toy airplane through the air above his knees. "It is landing in Chicago," he announced when Ethan approached. Ethan managed a smile. "Good airport." Noah looked pleased. "You know airports?" "A little." Claire met Ethan's eyes, but said nothing. They had agreed to keep the explanation simple. The clinic needed a cheek swab from Noah and another from Ethan. Noah had been told the doctor was helping answer an important family question. He accepted that explanation with the casual trust of a 5-year-old, then immediately asked whether the swab would taste like toothpaste. It did not. The appointment lasted less than 30 minutes. The waiting lasted 4 days. Ethan went to work, attended meetings, approved budgets, and answered questions about markets and expansion, but every decision felt distant. At night, he found himself looking at the photograph Claire had given him, a newborn boy he had never held. On the 4th afternoon, Claire called. The results came in. Ethan stood beside the windows of his office, 40 floors above the city. "Have you opened them?" "No. Neither will I. Not without you." They met at Claire's apartment an hour later. Noah was with Mrs. Parker. The clinic had sent identical secure copies to both parents. Claire placed her laptop on the kitchen table. Ethan sat across from her. Neither reached for the screen. "Whatever this says," Claire began, "Noah comes first." "Agreed. You do not make promises to him until you know you can keep them." "Agreed. And you do not disappear because this becomes difficult." Ethan looked at her. "I will not." Claire studied him for a long moment before opening the document. The clinical language filled the screen first. Names, dates, testing methods. Ethan read every line without understanding any of them until his eyes reached the conclusion. Probability of paternity, greater than 99%. The room became completely silent. Ethan stared at the number. He had expected it. Somewhere inside him, he had known from the moment Noah looked across that grocery store aisle. But suspicion had still left room for escape. The number did not. "He is my son," Ethan whispered. Claire looked down. "Yes." Ethan stood abruptly, not from anger, but because sitting had become impossible. He walked toward the window, then stopped. 5 birthdays. 5 Christmas mornings. First words. First steps. First day of preschool. More than 1,800 mornings when his son had awakened somewhere in the same city, while Ethan believed he had no child. He pressed one hand against the windowsill and closed his eyes. "I missed everything." Claire's voice came softly behind him. "Not everything." Ethan turned. "Claire, I missed 5 years." "Then do not waste the years you still have mourning the ones neither of us can change." He looked at her, surprised by the absence of accusation. "Why are you being kind to me?" Claire's expression tightened. "I am not doing this for you. Noah deserves a father who is not drowning in guilt." Ethan nodded slowly. "When can I see him?" "You already have. You know what I mean." Claire sat down. "Tomorrow is Saturday. He wants to go to the Aviation Museum for his birthday weekend." Ethan almost laughed at the coincidence, but emotion stopped him. "I can come. For 2 hours. I will be there. No gifts that cost more than a normal birthday gift." Ethan hesitated. "Define normal." Claire nearly smiled for the first time. "That question is exactly why I made the rule." Later, Ethan sat alone in his car outside her building, holding a printed copy of the test result. His phone showed 17 missed work messages. He ignored all of them. Instead, he opened the calendar on his phone and counted backward through 5 years of meetings, acquisitions, awards, and celebrations. Dates he had once considered milestones now looked strangely empty. Then he created a new appointment for Saturday morning. Aviation Museum with Noah. He stared at those 4 words until his vision blurred. For the first time in his life, Ethan understood that becoming a father had taken less than a second to confirm. Becoming Noah's dad might take years. Ethan arrived at the Aviation Museum 20 minutes early carrying one small gift bag. He had spent nearly an hour choosing what went inside, because every instinct he had developed as a millionaire told him to make the moment extraordinary. A private flight lesson for the future. A custom-built model aircraft. An entire room redesigned around Noah's interests. Instead, he bought a $30 model airplane kit from the museum store and hoped Claire would consider that normal. Noah arrived holding her hand and immediately spotted Ethan near the entrance. "You came." The simple surprise in his voice hurt more than Ethan expected. "I said I would." Noah looked at the gift bag. "Is that for me?" Claire gave Ethan a warning glance. "It is small," he said quickly. Noah opened it and smiled so widely that Ethan felt ridiculous for ever believing expensive meant meaningful. "We can build it?" Noah asked. Ethan looked at Claire before answering. "If your mom says it is okay." Claire nodded. Another day. Another day. Ethan was beginning to understand how much hope could fit inside 2 ordinary words. They spent the next 2 hours walking beneath suspended aircraft and exploring restored cockpits. Noah asked questions faster than Ethan could answer them. Why did wings bend? How high could jets fly? Why were airplane windows round? Ethan knew some answers and searched museum displays for the rest. For the first time in years, he did not check his phone. Near the end of the visit, Noah ran ahead to an interactive exhibit while Claire remained beside Ethan. "You did well," she said. Ethan glanced at her. "That sounded like an employee evaluation. You understand those. Apparently better than I understand 5-year-olds. Claire almost smiled. Ethan watched Noah pretending to guide an aircraft through clouds. "I want to help." Claire's expression changed. "You are helping. I mean financially." The warmth disappeared. Ethan continued carefully. "You returned formula yesterday because you needed the money. Your apartment is safe, but you are clearly watching every dollar. I can fix that." "There it is." "What?" "The solution, you understand." Ethan frowned. "Claire, he is my son. I have a responsibility." "Yes, you do. Financially and otherwise. But you do not get to walk into his life and replace 5 missing years with a bank transfer. That is not what I am trying to do. Maybe not intentionally." Ethan looked down. "Then tell me what to do." Claire pointed toward Noah. "Start there." Ethan followed her gaze. "He wakes up at 6:30. He hates scrambled eggs, but loves pancakes. He gets nervous before doctor appointments. He wants someone to read the same book 3 times even when they are tired of it. He remembers every promise anyone makes." Ethan listened without interrupting. "Money matters," Claire continued. "We will handle child support properly because that is his right. But Noah needs a father who shows up on an ordinary Tuesday more than he needs a millionaire who appears once a month with something expensive." Ethan absorbed every word. "What happens on Tuesday?" Claire looked surprised. "What? You said an ordinary Tuesday. What happens this Tuesday?" "I work until 6. Mrs. Parker usually picks him up from school." Ethan hesitated. "Could I?" Claire stared at him. "Pick him up. If the school approves it and you are comfortable. You have a company to run." "The company has survived meetings without me." Claire studied him, clearly expecting the confidence to disappear when the request became inconvenient. "School ends at 3:15. I will be there at 3. 3:15 is enough. I will still be there at 3. Noah returned before Claire could answer. "Are we building my airplane now?" Ethan smiled. "Your mom said another day." Noah looked disappointed until Ethan added, "Maybe Tuesday?" The boy immediately turned toward Claire. She looked from her son to Ethan. "Maybe Tuesday," she said. Ethan felt something unfamiliar settle inside him. Not victory. Not certainty. Responsibility. As they walked toward the exit, his phone finally vibrated again. Daniel had sent a message asking whether Ethan wanted the additional archived records they had recovered. Ethan opened the preview and stopped walking. One line appeared beneath the date of Claire's second visit. Margaret Cole had personally requested that all future communication from Claire Bennett be redirected away from Ethan's office. Ethan looked toward Noah, who was making airplane sounds beside his mother. Tuesday suddenly felt precious. Because before Ethan could build a future with his son, he still had to confront the person who had helped erase their past. Tuesday arrived with a problem Ethan would once have considered impossible to ignore. At 2:40 in the afternoon, Daniel walked into his office carrying documents for a conference call with investors representing nearly $80 million in new financing. They moved the call to 3:15, Daniel said. Ethan looked at the clock. Move it back. They cannot. Then reschedule it. Daniel stared at him. You are serious. Ethan closed his laptop and reached for his coat. I promised Noah I would pick him up from school. Daniel's expression softened. Go. I will handle the call. At 3 o'clock, Ethan was parked outside Noah's elementary school with the authorization Claire had arranged that morning. He felt more nervous walking toward the entrance than he had entering any boardroom. At 3:15, children began pouring through the doors. Noah appeared wearing his blue backpack and stopped when he saw Ethan. For one terrible second, Ethan wondered whether the boy had forgotten. Then Noah smiled. You came early. I told you I would. Mom said you were busy. Ethan crouched slightly. I am, but I am not too busy for everything. Noah considered that answer, then accepted it. They drove to Claire's apartment, where the model airplane waited unopened on the kitchen table. Mrs. Parker had agreed to remain nearby, while Ethan spent the afternoon with Noah. For almost 2 hours, they worked on the model together. Ethan attached one wing backward. Noah laughed so hard he nearly dropped the instruction sheet. You said you knew airplanes. I said I knew a little. That was very little. Ethan laughed with him, surprised by how natural it felt. At 6:10, Claire returned from work and stopped in the doorway. Noah immediately lifted the finished model. Ethan put the wing on wrong. Claire looked at Ethan. Did he? There was a temporary engineering problem. Noah laughed again. Claire tried not to smile and failed. Later, after Noah went to wash his hands before dinner, Ethan's expression became serious. I found more records. Claire understood immediately. About your mother? Ethan nodded. She personally instructed my office to redirect your communications. Claire looked down. I told you. I know. I should have believed you without needing company records. You did not know me anymore. I knew you once. Claire met his eyes. So did I. The distance between them suddenly felt larger than the kitchen. Ethan took out his phone. I am seeing my mother tonight. Claire's expression tightened. Do not involve Noah in whatever happens. I will not. And do not tell her where we live. Ethan paused, then nodded. Understood. 2 hours later, Ethan sat across from Margaret Cole in the living room of the house where he had grown up. His mother was 64 now, elegant and composed, the same woman who had encouraged him through every impossible year of building his company. Ethan placed the archived records on the coffee table. Margaret looked at them once and immediately understood. Where did you get these? That is your first question? Margaret looked at her son. Ethan, did Claire come to my office 6 years ago? Silence. Yes. The answer was so simple that Ethan almost wished she had lied. Did she tell you she was pregnant? Margaret's composure changed. She said she believed the child was yours. Ethan stared at her. He is mine. Margaret closed her eyes. You had the test? 99.99%. The room became still. Ethan leaned forward. You knew I might have a son, and you said nothing. You were building everything you had worked for. That was not your decision to make. You were 32 years old, exhausted, nearly bankrupt, and about to sign the deal that saved your company. Claire arrived asking for you after months of fighting between you. I thought she would pull you back into chaos. Ethan's voice remained quiet. So you erased her? I told her you needed space. She says you told her I wanted no contact. Margaret looked away. That was enough. Ethan stood slowly. 5 years. Ethan, I thought I was protecting you. From my own son? Margaret's eyes filled with regret. I did not know for certain. Neither did I. Because you made sure I could not. Ethan turned toward the door. Margaret called his name. He stopped, but did not face her. What happens now? She asked. Ethan looked down at the photograph of Noah on his phone, smiling beside a model airplane with one wing slightly crooked. Now I stop letting other people decide what my family needs. He walked outside into the cold evening air, knowing his mother had finally admitted the truth. But one question remained unanswered. If Margaret had intercepted Claire in person, who had sent the message pretending Ethan wanted no further contact? By Wednesday morning, Ethan had stopped asking whether someone had interfered with his past. The only question left was how far that interference had gone. Daniel met him in the executive conference room before sunrise with a laptop and 2 cups of coffee. I found the message Claire described, he said. Ethan sat down immediately. The archived email was brief, cold, and written as though it came directly from Ethan's office. It stated that Ethan wished Claire well, but did not want further personal contact. Who sent it? Ethan asked. Daniel enlarged the technical record. The account belonged to your former executive assistant, but the login came from a device assigned to the temporary executive suite your mother used during the expansion. Ethan stared at the screen. So my mother sent it. The records cannot prove who physically typed it, but she already admitted telling Claire I wanted space. Daniel nodded carefully. Then you have your answer unless you need something more formal. Ethan leaned back. 6 years earlier, he would have destroyed a business relationship over a betrayal half this serious. Now anger felt almost too simple. Punishment could not return Noah's first 5 birthdays. Revenge could not give Claire back the years she believed she had been rejected. Delete nothing, Ethan said. Preserve the records, but nobody outside this room sees them. Daniel studied him. You are protecting Margaret? No. I am protecting Noah from becoming a family scandal. That afternoon, Ethan met Claire at a quiet coffee shop while Noah was at school. He placed printed copies of the records on the table. Claire read them slowly. Her face showed no satisfaction when she reached the final page. So it was her. The evidence points to her office, and she admitted enough for me to understand what happened. Claire folded the papers. What are you going to do? Set boundaries. That is all. Ethan looked at her. What would destroying my mother accomplish for Noah? Claire said nothing. She will not meet him unless you agree, Ethan continued. She will not contact you directly. She will have no role in decisions about him. If she wants any place in his life someday, she will earn it slowly, and only if you believe it is healthy for him. Claire studied his face. 6 years ago, you would have gone to war. 6 years ago, I thought winning was the same thing as solving something. And now? Ethan glanced toward the window. Now I have a 5-year-old who thinks I cannot build airplanes correctly. Claire smiled despite herself. He is not wrong. Ethan smiled too, then became serious. There is something else I need to say. My mother made the decision, but I made it possible. Claire frowned. You did not know. I made myself unreachable. I changed numbers, lived through assistance, and treated every personal problem like it could wait until after the next deal. You should have been able to reach me without passing through an organization. Claire looked down at her coffee. I should have tried harder too. You tried enough to be rejected by someone pretending to speak for me. Silence settled between them, but it no longer felt hostile. What happens now? Claire asked. Ethan answered without hesitation. Tomorrow morning, I take Noah to school if you still trust me to. Claire looked surprised. That is your plan. It is Thursday. He has school. The simplicity of the answer seemed to affect her more than any grand promise could have. The next morning, Ethan arrived at 6:45. Noah opened the apartment door wearing one sneaker and holding the other. Mom says you cannot come in because I am not ready. Claire called from the kitchen. That is not what I said. Ethan laughed and helped Noah tie his shoe after receiving permission. They ate pancakes at the small kitchen table, and Noah explained an upcoming school project with the seriousness of a board presentation. Before leaving, he handed Ethan a folded piece of paper. What is this? Ethan asked. My family picture. Ethan opened it. Claire stood on one side. Noah stood in the middle. Mrs. Parker was beside them. At the far edge was a newly drawn figure in a charcoal suit with very long arms. That is you, Noah explained. Ethan could not speak for a moment. Why are my arms so long? Because you are tall. Claire watched from the kitchen doorway. Ethan carefully folded the picture and placed it inside his coat. He had spent years collecting awards that eventually disappeared into drawers. This piece of paper felt more valuable than all of them. Then Noah looked up at him. Are you coming to my school presentation next Friday? Ethan smiled. I will be there. His phone vibrated immediately. Daniel's message appeared on the screen. The company's largest acquisition meeting had just been scheduled for the same Friday, at the exact same time. For the next 7 days, the acquisition meeting followed Ethan everywhere. It appeared on his calendar in red, surrounded by reminders from attorneys, bankers, and executives who had spent nearly a year preparing for it. The transaction could expand coal logistics into 12 new markets and become the largest deal in the company's history. 6 months earlier, Ethan would have treated the meeting as untouchable. Now every time he saw the appointment, he remembered Noah looking up at him and asking one simple question. Are you coming? On Monday morning, Daniel entered Ethan's office carrying the final briefing materials. The other side will not move the meeting, he said. Ethan continued reading. Then I will join remotely afterward. Daniel stared at him. The presentation starts at 10. The acquisition meeting starts at 10:30. I know. Ethan, you are the chief executive officer. Ethan closed the folder. Which is why I hired people capable of entering a conference room without me. Daniel almost smiled. The board may not appreciate that answer. The board pays me to build a company that can function when I leave the room. Friday arrived cold and bright. At 9:45, Ethan walked into Noah's elementary school wearing the same charcoal suit he would have worn to the acquisition meeting. Parents filled the small multipurpose room, holding phones and whispering as children arranged projects on tables. Claire stood near the back. When she saw Ethan, surprise crossed her face. You came. Ethan glanced toward the rows of children. I said I would. I heard about the acquisition meeting. Ethan looked at her. How? Your face is still occasionally in the business news. They will survive 30 minutes. Claire studied him carefully. You do not have to prove anything to me. I am not here for you. The words sounded harsher than intended, so Ethan added softly. I am here because Noah asked me. Claire's expression warmed. Across the room, Noah spotted him. His entire face changed. He waved both hands above his head, as if Ethan might somehow miss him from 20 feet away. Ethan waved back. At 10 o'clock, the presentations began. Noah's project was a cardboard model of an airport with paper airplanes hanging from string. When his turn came, he stood beside it and explained how passengers moved from check-in to the gate. Halfway through, he forgot what he wanted to say. His eyes moved across the room until they found Ethan. Ethan smiled and gave him a small nod. Noah took a breath and continued. At 10:22, Ethan's phone vibrated inside his pocket. He ignored it. At 10:28, it vibrated again. He did not move. Noah finished at 10:31 to warm applause from the room. Then he ran directly toward Ethan. Did you see the control tower? I saw everything. Even when I forgot. Ethan crouched slightly. Especially then. Noah smiled. Ethan's phone rang a third time. He finally checked it. Daniel had sent one message. We started without you. Nobody died. Ethan laughed quietly. What? Noah asked. Nothing important. Later, outside the school, Claire stopped beside Ethan's car. You missed the beginning of the biggest meeting of your career. I joined 20 minutes late. For a kindergarten presentation. Ethan looked through the school windows where Noah was showing his project to another child. There will be other deals. Claire was silent. Ethan continued. He only gets one first school presentation after I learn he is my son. Claire's eyes softened. You are different. No. Ethan shook his head. I am finally paying attention to what I was too busy to notice. His phone rang again. This time, it was Margaret. Ethan almost declined the call, but something made him answer. Hello. His mother's voice was quiet. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. Ethan said nothing. But I wrote Claire a letter. An apology. I will not send it unless you think I should. Ethan looked toward Claire. That is not my decision. Margaret paused. I understand. If you want forgiveness, you need to stop asking me to manage the consequences of what you did. Another silence followed. You are right, Margaret said. After the call ended, Ethan told Claire about the letter. She considered it carefully. I am not ready to see her. You do not have to. But someday, Noah may ask about his grandmother. Ethan nodded. Then we answer him honestly, in a way he can understand. Claire looked at him for a long moment. You really mean that? I mean all of it. Before she could respond, Noah came running through the school doors carrying his cardboard airport. Ethan, wait. He stopped in front of them and held out a small paper airplane. This one is for you. Ethan accepted it carefully. On one wing, Noah had written a single word in uneven letters. Family. Ethan stared at it, unaware that the most important test was still ahead, because keeping one promise had been easy. Building a life where Noah never had to wonder whether Ethan would stay would require him to keep showing up long after the extraordinary became ordinary. 3 months later, Ethan no longer needed reminders for Noah's schedule. Tuesday afternoons belonged to school pickup. Thursday mornings meant pancakes, although Ethan still occasionally made them too dark around the edges. Every other Saturday included the aviation museum, the park, or whatever ordinary adventure Noah selected with the seriousness of a corporate strategist. Nothing happened quickly. Claire had insisted on that. and Ethan had finally learned that patience was not the absence of progress. Sometimes it was the only way progress lasted. Noah now knew Ethan was his biological father. Claire and Ethan had explained it together using simple words and no unnecessary details. Noah had listened quietly before asking the question Ethan feared most. Why were you not here before? Ethan had looked at Claire, then answered carefully. Because I did not know about you. But I know now, and I am very glad I do. Noah had accepted the answer without understanding the years behind it. For the moment, that was enough. Margaret remained outside Noah's life. She had sent Claire one handwritten apology without requesting forgiveness or a response. Claire read it, placed it in a drawer, and said she needed time. Ethan respected that. He had stopped trying to force every unfinished problem toward an immediate conclusion. On a rainy Thursday evening, Ethan arrived at Claire's apartment carrying groceries because Noah had decided they should make pizza from scratch. Claire opened the door and looked at the bags. You bought enough food for 12 people. I am still adjusting. To grocery shopping? To normal quantities. She laughed, and Ethan realized how much he had missed that sound. Later, flour covered the kitchen counter while Noah argued that pineapple belonged on every pizza. Ethan disagreed. Claire refused to take sides. For an hour, there were no discussions about paternity tests, missed years, corporate records, or old betrayals. There was only dinner. After Noah fell asleep on the couch during a movie, Ethan carefully carried him to bed. When he returned, Claire was standing by the kitchen window. He trusts you now, she said. Ethan looked toward the hallway. I know. That scares me. Ethan understood immediately. Because I could leave. Claire nodded. People make promises when everything feels new. Then life becomes ordinary. Ethan leaned against the counter. Claire, I cannot promise I will never make a mistake. I am not asking for perfection. I can promise that I will not disappear when this stops feeling extraordinary. She looked at him. How do I know? Ethan thought about the question before answering. You do not. Not yet. You watch what I do. Claire's expression softened. That is a very different answer from the man I knew 6 years ago. The man you knew 6 years ago would have given you a presentation explaining why you should trust him. Probably with charts. Excellent charts. Claire laughed quietly. Then the silence between them changed. Not romantic certainty. Not a sudden repair of everything broken. Something smaller and more honest. Possibility. I never stopped caring about you, Claire said. Ethan did not move. But caring is not enough to rebuild what happened. I know. And Noah cannot become the reason we pretend the past did not hurt. Agreed. Claire studied him. You are making this conversation annoyingly difficult to argue with. Ethan smiled. I have improved. Slightly. He looked toward Noah's room. Whatever happens between us, I am his father first. Claire nodded. That is the answer I needed. A week later, Ethan received an invitation to speak at an international business summit in London. The event fell on the same weekend Noah was scheduled to participate in his first school family day. Daniel expected Ethan to accept immediately. Instead, Ethan declined the summit and recommended another executive. When Claire heard, she confronted him. You cannot keep canceling your life for us. Ethan shook his head. I am not canceling my life. I am deciding what belongs in it. On family day, Ethan arrived carrying the crooked model airplane they had built together. Noah spotted him across the schoolyard and ran over. You brought it. You told me to. Noah took the airplane, then reached for Ethan's hand without thinking. Ethan looked down at their joined hands, but said nothing. Claire saw it from several feet away. Her eyes met Ethan's, and this time there was no fear in them, only cautious hope. Ethan understood then that Claire's final test had never been whether he would sacrifice one important meeting. It was whether he could keep choosing his son when nobody was watching, when there was no crisis to solve, and when showing up had become ordinary. As Noah pulled him toward the other families, Ethan followed without checking his phone. He no longer needed to prove that he could stay. He simply needed to keep staying. 1 year after Ethan first saw Noah standing beside Claire in that grocery store, he found himself back in the same aisle, staring at the same shelf of baby formula. This time, there was no returned container in Claire's hands and no devastating secret waiting between them. Noah stood several feet away comparing 2 boxes of cereal while explaining, with complete confidence, why the one shaped like stars would make him better at science. Ethan listened seriously. That sounds scientifically questionable. Noah looked offended. It says stars on the box. Strong evidence. Claire laughed as she placed groceries into the cart. The sound still caught Ethan by surprise sometimes, not because it was rare anymore, but because he remembered when he thought he would never hear it again. Their life had not transformed overnight. Ethan still ran coal logistics. Claire still worked, still protected her independence, and still reminded him that ordering dinner from an expensive restaurant did not count as learning to cook. They had rebuilt their relationship slowly, beginning with trust before allowing themselves to consider love. 6 months earlier, Ethan had moved into a house 15 minutes from Claire and Noah rather than asking them to move into his larger home across the city. He wanted proximity without pressure. He wanted Noah to know that his father lived close enough for forgotten lunch boxes, unexpected school closures, ordinary dinners, and bad dreams that needed another familiar voice. Margaret had eventually met Noah, but only after months of respecting every boundary Claire and Ethan established. Their first meeting had lasted 30 minutes in a public park. Margaret had not asked Noah to call her grandmother. She had simply introduced herself and followed his lead. Forgiveness remained unfinished, but Ethan had learned that unfinished did not always mean hopeless. Some wounds healed through time, accountability, and changed behavior rather than one perfect conversation. At the grocery store checkout, Noah suddenly noticed the formula display near the register. "Was I ever that small?" he asked. Claire smiled. "Smaller? Did Dad know me then?" The question came without warning. Ethan and Claire exchanged a glance. They had always promised each other they would answer Noah honestly as he became old enough to ask more. Ethan crouched beside him. "I did not know about you when you were a baby." Noah frowned. "Why not?" Ethan chose his words carefully. "Some adults made mistakes, and some important messages did not reach me. Your mom tried to tell me. I wish I had known." Noah thought about that. "Were you sad when you found out?" Ethan nodded. "Very. Because you missed me?" Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Yes." Noah considered the answer for another moment, then placed one small hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You know me now." For simple words. No accusation. No demand to repair the impossible. Just the truth of a child who measured love by who arrived, who stayed, and who remembered Tuesday pickup. Ethan smiled. "Yes, I do." Outside, Claire loaded the groceries while Noah climbed into the back seat. Ethan closed the trunk and turned toward her. "He is better at this than we are." "At what?" "Knowing which part matters." Claire looked through the window at their son. "Children usually are." Ethan reached for her hand. A year earlier, she might have hesitated. Now her fingers closed around his. "Dinner at my place?" he asked. "Are you cooking?" "I was considering ordering something." Claire started walking toward the passenger side. "Then no." Ethan laughed. "I can cook. You burned pancakes last Thursday. They were aggressively caramelized." From the back seat, Noah shouted, "They were burned." Claire laughed again. Ethan opened her door, then looked across the parking lot at the ordinary afternoon unfolding around them. For most of his adult life, he had believed success would arrive as something enormous. A company, a fortune, a name people recognized. But none of those things had prepared him for the quiet weight of a child's hand reaching for his, or the privilege of being expected somewhere at 3:15. Later that evening, the three of them sat around Ethan's kitchen table eating pizza they had made themselves. The crust was uneven. Noah had used too much cheese. Claire claimed Ethan had still not learned how much sauce was enough. It was imperfect, loud, and ordinary. Ethan looked at the two people across from him and understood what 6 lost years had taught him. Money could recover a failing company. Power could open almost any door. But neither could purchase the moments a person failed to show up for. Those had to be protected while they were happening. Noah reached across the table and handed Ethan a paper airplane he had folded from a grocery receipt. "For you," he said. Ethan turned it over. Written across one wing in uneven letters were 3 words. "My dad stays." Ethan looked at Claire, then back at his son. "Always when it matters," he said. Noah smiled. And this time, when the future arrived, Ethan was already there.